I'm going to talk about a case that's currently happening. It's a criminal case. Charges against the midwife are manslaughter and that she delayed to transfer a baby in early labour or in labour from home to hospital. This case, like a previous case in Australia, this one is not in Australia. The one in Australia went on for 5 years, and also a similar case in America involving Angela Hock that I've documented in other places. It doesn't in a way matter whether the prosecution even win their case. Simply taking a case increases fear with practitioners and with families. So let's have a look at it. What is manslaughter when it's a clinician? If I chase you across the road with a knife in my hand saying I'm going to kill you, and I don't actually touch you, but you run under the wheels of a truck, a bus, or over the edge of a cliff and die, I would be convicted of manslaughter. So I don't have to have the intent to kill, but the recklessness has to be so reckless that a reasonable person could foresee it's likely to result in death. Now that's general manslaughter, and at the moment we have a football case where Israeli footballers were playing in Europe. They were attacked by some European fans and they didn't die, but there's attempted manslaughter. So again, that's criminal and that's not medical negligence manslaughter. So the term is gross negligent manslaughter, negligent really referring to medical negligence. To have this, we must owe a duty of care, we must have breached that duty of care, and we must have caused, the legal word is causation, we must have caused the injuries that led to the death. This is obviously harm. So if a midwife has a woman in labour at home, whether she's employed by the state or independent, doesn't matter, and she transfers in, and the state hospital delay in even seeing the woman, in treating the mother and baby, and in helping when the baby needs help, that is so delayed, all of their delays cause the death. Plus, or minus, as in many cases, there are congenital abnormalities leading to the death of the baby. It's sad, it's tragic, but congenital abnormalities are the biggest reason why babies die before birth, during birth and after birth. So in this case, the midwife transferred in plenty of time, but what she's really being criticised for is taking a home birth, saying, oh, your woman was not suitable. Now, whose choice is it to have the home birth, the midwife or the woman? Or in fact, is it the state? So in some autocratic, authoritarian countries, or maybe we're all living in authoritarian countries, to some extent, we have this freedom to debate, discuss things, but they are quite authoritarian, even in democracies, but obviously not as authoritarian as other countries we've seen, like Iran or what was happening in Syria and other countries. So whose choice is it? It's the woman's choice. It doesn't feel like it, and the midwife is often blamed for the choices made by a woman. Now, we have to focus on a defence. There was a famous case in Hungary of Agnes Garrow. She was actually convicted, she was jailed, then had house arrest, largely due to public international pressure. The state granted clemency to her. They didn't quash her conviction, they didn't say, okay, she didn't do it. They never had a fair trial, she never had proper defence, witnesses allowed to speak, some of them simply because they were not Hungarian. This is the kind of Mickey Mouse kangaroo courts we have, and it happens throughout Europe, in Germany, Austria, France, Italy, Romania, Bulgaria. Are they in Europe? But everywhere. They have their state-run. One of the systems is state-run things means they're publicly funded. So you can have a state-run organisation given millions, and you've got one individual midwife, not given millions, who has to defend themselves. So what I focus on for the defence is two things. One, simply defend, give a reasonable account of how you are a safe, competent practitioner, and how things were a woman's choice, how she was well informed, how she has mental capacity to make decisions for herself. That is presumed. It's a rebuttable presumption, so it's a good legal assumption that the woman has legal capacity. Even if she makes a decision that we think is illogical or one that we wouldn't make, she has legal capacity unless it's proven otherwise. So, two things I said. One is the midwife needs to focus on their defence. The second area that's very important is the offence. Now, we're all nice, kind, polite people. We don't want to cause offence. We don't want to take offensive action. And that's a failure. We will, nice, kind people, lose our licence, lose our income, lose our job, lose our personal, professional reputation, and lose our ability sometimes to work with adults and children if we need certain certificates to be able to do that and you've been struck off or you've in fact got a criminal conviction. So there's some of the powerful motivations to take action, action being offensive action against the state. One of the overarching actions one could take is one for malicious prosecution. There's a fourfold test to this. The first one is the stumbling block. The case has to be concluded in your favour already. Then you can move on and show that there was no reasonable cause to take the action. It was motivated by malice and it caused harm. They're the four factors. So the first one, if the case isn't concluded, you cannot take that. However, you can take other offence type actions. You can collect information before you give information. So under the Data Protection Act in all countries, there is the same act. Ask for information related to you, not only your correspondence and their correspondence between you and the organisation, like the Crown Prosecutor, the State Prosecutor, the police, a hospital if that's involved, but also information they've shared with others when they talk about you. And this is very revealing and very helpful. So for example, if a police person communicated with the prosecutor or vice versa, and they said things that would help your case, then it's very useful to get that information. So collect the information and you can look at what cases you can take. So there's also wrongdoing in a public office. So the state prosecutor is doing this for their own agenda, for their own personal reputation, to get more money, more fame, or maybe just to increase fear in the home birth community. Is there such a thing as a home birth community? There are women making choices for how and where they birth, and sometimes they're choosing hospital, and then the hospitals say, oh, your baby's too big, it's too small, you've got a bit of gestational diabetes because we've narrowed the parameters. Now everybody has gestational diabetes, probably including the midwives. They will find some risk factor and say, better we induce you at 38 or 39 weeks. And some of those women are like, well, that's not what I wanted. I wanted to have spontaneous onset of labour, leave things alone naturally, that's better for me and the baby, isn't it? And only have help if I really need it. So those women who are reluctant to have home birth are kind of forced into home birth, or in some cases unassisted or free birth. Better that they have a care provider who's clinically competent, has a relationship with them, knows them well, and can respond to prevent problems, deal with problems, and also be there throughout the future relationship, maybe for another pregnancy, and is a good professional friend to the family, a trusted mentor, good clinician. It's also great satisfaction for the midwife or doctor if they're working with home birth. There's a very well-known Dr. Stu Fishbein, focuses on twins and breech. Of course, with breech, with twins, 50% are breech. So he's out there in America, I think he's pretty mature, about 70. And so as we get older, we probably have less inhibition to work outside the state system. But anybody can find themselves being challenged by the state. There was a criminal gross negligent manslaughter case in the UK, really related to obstetric anaesthetists, where tragically an Indian woman living in England died in a cesarean. That case was dropped very quickly when the judge directed the jury to return with a verdict of no case to answer. That was some years ago, not so long ago, but the tide is turning with more cases, more investigations. The police will investigate independent practitioners doing home birth far more than they ever will a hospital. And we obviously have in the UK the Lucy Letby case, so many preventable deaths of babies, and none of it's the hospital's fault. There were clear failings in the hospital with management, with consultant paediatricians, not neonatologists, funnily enough. It really ought to be neonatal staff working in a neonatal unit. And general paediatrics is different. They do get good experience. The main speciality of neonatology gives so many benefits that would help those babies. But the infrastructure with sewage backing up into the sink for a huge period of time and well-known bacteria that are threatening very vulnerable, very premature, very, very low weight babies. Some of them are 700-800 grams. One was at 32 weeks, expected to be about 1.5 kilo, and he was half that weight because there were problems with the placenta. Now back to finish this story, the current case I'm looking at, the placenta itself is very small and scrappy and not very healthy. So there were problems with the placenta that led to the child's death. Whether there's congenital abnormalities, that can be a separate thing. When there's placental insufficiency, very clearly evidence, and the baby died a week or so after the birth, then it's not the responsibility, the blame or the fault does not lie with the home birth midwife who started a home birth, transferred in early labour or in established labour, but in plenty of time to receive treatment for a baby who was showing signs they might need some help. So the failings are very much in the system, not the independent midwife or hospital midwife. So back to, we need a good defence and a good offence. And a lot of this is contained in my book, Keeping Midwives Safe. The next book will be How to Protect Your Practice, and it's more open to all healthcare professionals. I do focus on clinical scenarios for home birth and hospital birth because that's been my experience for a few decades. Thank you for watching, and feel free to comment or send me messages with questions.